Welcome to our first finalist forum. We really appreciate you being here and giving your time. Before we get going with our forum, I'll explain some of the protocols that we're going to follow tonight. Those of you that wanted a question asked, we've collected those. We probably will not get through all of the questions. We will try to do that. During the forum, you have another form that you can make notes on. This will be a feedback form. At the end of the forum, we'd like you, if you'd like to give us some feedback about the finalists tonight. That information is anonymous, and it will be compiled in a data set that will be provided the board when they do their deliberations. Also, and I'll give you this email again, if you'd rather just email those comments, you can email to a special email I've set up. This goes directly to me, and I redact your email, your name, and I take the content and put it into the data set. That email is clementn53@gmail.com, and I'll give you that email again at the end. If you would, as a respect to all of our finalists, if you could please silence your phones, and if you could kind of take a break from social media during this forum. I know I'm asking if you could, in order to be fair to all of our finalists. We are working very hard at making sure each finalist has the same type of opportunity. Also, if you would, please hold your applause until the end of the forum so we can get more questions asked. And again, a respect to all of our candidates. My name is Dr. Nick Clement. I am a consultant with the Arizona School Board Association, a nonprofit organization that helps support school boards. Your school board contracted with me to be the consultant on this search. There are 9 phases to this search. This is one of those phases. The board was adamant about wanting stakeholder input into the entire process. We had forums to get information about the profile. We now have forums to get feedback about the 4 finalists. We have each finalist having a separate night to do that. We have had a full day of the finalists visiting schools, and again, I so appreciate you being here. It gives me great pleasure at this time to introduce Stephen Trejo. Stephen Trejo is a finalist for the superintendent position. I'm going to let him introduce himself and talk about his goals, vision for the district. Once he's done with that, I will begin asking your questions. And again, we will make every attempt to get through as many questions as possible. And then at the end of the forum, Stephen's going to hang around and he'd be glad to talk with you. So at this point, I'm going to turn the forum over to Stephen Trejo to introduce himself and talk about his goals and vision for the district. Stephen Trejo.
Well, first I'd like to thank each one of you for being here this evening. It's been a really exciting day. I've had an opportunity to visit with the employee groups. Also, transportation. I was amazed at the things that transportation pulls off in this district and the desire to do such a great job with each one of our students to get them to where they need to be safely each day. Then I had a chance Nick took me out to lunch. We went to a really fancy restaurant, Carl's Jr., and thank you, Nick. It was a good salad.
Nothing but the best.
I guess we were on a tight schedule. So we went to Carl's Jr., and then after that, we went and visited 3 amazing schools. We visited Mary Bell McCorkle. I thought I saw Mary Bell here. Where's Mary Bell? I thought I saw her walk in. Hi, Mary Bell. I'm going to tell a quick story about Mary Bell. When I was just getting started, I took a class from her, and I wrote this paper, and she really actually was one of the ones that really inspired me to get into education. I took one of her education classes when I was becoming a teacher, or I think an administrator, and I wrote this paper, and she just gave me the nicest comments on that paper. In fact, I still have that paper somewhere. We've talked about this paper before and how it inspired me to stick in education and really follow through. So thank you, Mary Bell, and thank you for being here. Then after I visited the Mary Bell McCorkle School, then we went to Tucson High, and I had no idea all of the many opportunities that Tucson High provides to its students. It's really quite an amazing school. I saw a theater there with I guess, quite nationally renowned drama teacher. He was in People magazine, and spending 5 minutes with him, I could feel his enthusiasm and his love, not only for drama, but for his students. Then I went from there, and I went to Dodge Middle School, and it was always a delight to be there with Dr. Schulter and see all the great things that they're doing at Dodge Middle School. And then I had an opportunity to visit with the board for about 2 hours, and that was really a lot of fun. No, really, it really was. Really, I'm not kidding, it really was fun. I know all of them, and the one that I didn't have a chance to meet, she was on a little tiny screen, because we were doing it long distance Skype, and so she was on this little tiny screen, and Rachel extended quite a few really good questions that were fun to answer. And then I've been spending the last hour stressing about this opportunity. So now I'm here. In fact, that reminds me of a little story. There was a mother and daughter, and they were getting on this city bus. And when the mother she had her little daughter, and she was about 3 years old, and they were getting on the bus. And as she was getting on the bus, there was these 3 elderly ladies that were just watching her and how she interacted with her child, because it was pretty stressful trying to get on the bus, and it was pretty crowded. And the mother was talking to the little girl. The mother was saying, "Becky, you can do this. Becky, you're doing such a good job. Becky, you can do this." And the lady said, "I just need to tell you, we are so impressed on how you're treating your little daughter, or how you're treating Becky." And she said, "She's not Becky, I'm Becky." So that's kind of how I'm feeling tonight. I've been doing a lot of the "you can do this." So I wanted to start off this evening, and part of it was to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about myself. And my sister's here this evening, and I wanted to tell you my first school story. And we lived here in Tucson. In fact, if I would have stayed in Tucson, I would have gone to Bonillas School, where one of my past assistant principal is the outstanding principal there. In fact, we lived right in that neighborhood. But before I was able to go to school there, we moved to a small community called St. David. And it's between Benson and Tombstone, if you've never heard of St. David. But it's this little tiny community, and I went to school there. And my first day of school, I was kind of a chubby kid. Well, I was like really chubby. And so back then, they would never do this now, but back then they did something, and they would have the children go up in front of the classroom, and they would weigh each child on one of those scales, where you move the weights and you put on more weights if it goes up too much. Okay, so all the little kids were getting up there, and it was like 30 pounds, 35 pounds, 30 pounds, and then I got up, and she kept putting on weights, and it was 84 pounds. I remember that number, and all the kids just went, "Wow." So that was kind of an embarrassing way, but then it didn't end there. So then after that, we tried to do some reading, and we went out to play at the playground, and they had something, and this is something that we wouldn't have any longer either because it's a big liability issue, but they had one of those merry-go-rounds that you can get going really fast. And unfortunately, they wouldn't let me get on because they said, "You're too fat, you'll slow it down." So that was my first day of school. So I remember walking over to this place all by myself and just sitting down and kind of sobbing because it was a very bad day. And my sister, somehow she noticed, or I don't know how she saw me, but she saw me over there, and she walked over and sat down beside me, put her arm around me and said, "Stephen, I love you." And that's one of the keys to helping our students be here, that sometimes there are students that are ignored or overlooked because of whatever reason. And sometimes you have to find those students and reach out to them and let them know that you love them, because it makes all the difference. And so I guess that would be one of my premier goal, is to make sure that every student is really loved. And you know, sometimes people think that principals or superintendents can do that all by themselves, but basically they can't. It's all the good people and all the teachers here that do that every day. You know, they let their students know how much they love them, and principals do their best to let every student, but it's really the teacher in the classroom that lets their students know how much they love them. And they do it in a couple different ways. First, they demand the best out of their students, and then they also support them so they can be their best. So, you know, sometimes I've talked about, at Rose, we talked about something that we are trying to be tougher, but we're also trying to be kinder. And how can you be both tougher and kinder? And you can be tougher by demanding the best, but you can be kinder by supporting them and doing everything in your power to help them be successful. And you know, I see a lot of folks from Rose, and it's just such a pleasure to see them. In fact, there's one gentleman here, Mr. Aguilar, and he's here. One of his daughter, Michelle, was one of my first students, and now she's a doctor. And so right there, it just is really wonderful. Is Michelle here? Hi, Michelle. You know, she's one of those students that when you're going along and you made a mistake on the board, and she said, Mr. Trejo, I think that's wrong. And after a while, I started saying, yeah, you're probably right, that's wrong. And so she, you know, then I'd have to erase and spell it right, because she would correct me. But I always appreciate that, Michelle. Still do. So if I say something wrong, just say something, and I'll fix it. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my vision. The first one is that we really need to love our students. And that's so important because, you know, I had a daughter that had the same problem that I did, and she was overweight, and she was at an elementary school in TUSD, and I didn't find out about this until years later. And she told me, she said, Dad, you know that I spent my entire 5th grade in the tunnel to eat lunch every day because the children were cruel to me. They said, you know, they would call her names because she was overweight. And you know, the next year we took her out and we homeschooled her. And we homeschooled her for 2 years, and then she went to Gridley, and she had a wonderful time at Gridley and did really well at Gridley, and then went on to SWOR and graduated and got a scholarship, and now she's a teacher. And she's just so passionate about education. I have 5 daughters and 1 son. My son's here. My daughters are either married or graduated, and they've gone in a lot of different directions. And you know, as much as I love education, I just really love my family, and my wonderful, beautiful wife is here this evening to support me. She came down from Queen Creek, and they came down to support me, and I'm so thankful she's here. It's really a support. But as far as my vision, first, we want to make sure that we really love the students, because that's the most important thing. The second thing is, you know, TUSD, when I first started in TUSD, I think we had about 65,000 students. I think that number's about right. Now we're down to 49,000. And you wonder why that's happening, because at all schools, it's not happening that way. In fact, at CE Rose, when I left, I think our capacity rate was about somewhere between 115 and 120% capacity. So you know, when you achieve and you create a culture that people want to be a part of, they really come to your schools. And you know, the competitive environment is really competitive these days. And you know, right now I work for a charter school, and they have an amazing organization, and they have gone from 150 students to 10,000 students in less than, from 2009 until the present. In fact, they just opened up 4 schools. So they're doing a lot of innovative things that we can learn a lot from. But the most important thing that I've found is to have teachers that have a passion for teaching and that they really know how to help children achieve well. And so in a nutshell, I mean, there's a lot more to the vision than that. And the thing is, you can't have a vision by yourself, and a superintendent can't have a vision by himself. It has to be a common shared vision. In fact, when we created our common vision at Rose, it was a team effort. We created it together. And it was a 2-word mission statement, and we called it our mission vision statement. And we all worked really hard to achieve that. You know, TUSD has so many good things going in TUSD, but sometimes, and there's this idea that it's called wildly important goals. And so there's all of these things we need to do to keep this big ship afloat, and those are really important, and each one is important. The USP, the desegregation plan, customer service, having great cultures at our school. I mean, there's a list of, you know, many things that we need to, our budgets. but we need to have one wildly important goal. And I found that when students are achieving, that everything seems to fall in place. And I can give you a little example of this, and I used it in the interview in the paper the other day. You all know about President Kennedy, and about 2 years before he made that statement about putting a man on the moon and bringing him home safely, he made that statement as the vision for NASA. But before then, NASA had like 8 or 10 goals, and I have it in a book over here. I'd read it to you. Maybe if we have a chance this evening, I could read it to you. But there were about 8 to 10 goals that they had, these really complicated, really important, worthwhile goals. But NASA was really floundering. It was this huge organization that was really floundering because they didn't really have this wildly important goal. But when President Kennedy had the courage to say, we want to take a man to the moon and return him safely, then everybody focused. And it's really interesting because as I read this story, that the morale at NASA skyrocketed, the focus skyrocketed, and each one of those goals were achieved by having one goal that was their wildly important goal. And I know that we can achieve much better, and I think that's one of the reasons that they even considered me to be a candidate for this position, is because I know it can be done. I know it can be done when a team of people have a wildly important goal and that they work together to achieve it. And so this is not really about me. This is about all of TUSD working together and to achieve the wildly important goal, which is have our achievement as good or better than anybody in this area. And I know we can do it because we've done it at our school, and I know we can do it together. And with the dedicated and all the resources and potential that we have here, our amazing students and the teachers and the administrators and the parents in the community, I know we can achieve really great things. And I know it's a little risky to talk about achievement because there's so many other things, but when you talk about achievement, that love part is the key in helping students achieve. Because what I've found is that the teachers that are relentless in their instruction, they do everything in their power to help their children get the most out of their education so they can really be prepared for their future. Not only high school, but college or career or whatever they want to do. So that's basically in a nutshell. I have 6 points to my vision, which maybe we'll touch upon this evening as we visit and as I answer some of your questions.
So I have an announcement. The live streaming has gone down right now, but we are Facebook Live. Okay? I don't even know if I said that right because I'm technology challenged. So let your friends know that it's Facebook Live right now. Here's the first question. You have had success at an elementary school with under 800 students. How do you see your style scaling to a district the size of TUSD?
That's a great question, and that's a really tough question. I've had experience at Rose, and then I've also had experience at a charter organization that has almost 10,000 students now, and we're working on the same thing, achievement, because we know that it will help people want to be part of that organization. So I've had a little more experience in that, but that's really not a key. This is a huge district, almost 50,000 students, and how do you work with that many people? And I guess I would go back to that whole idea of, and not that I'm comparing myself with President Kennedy, but having that strong, powerful vision that we have this common vision together. And as I've been visiting with the employee groups and the board, this is never a me thing. It's never been a me thing for me. That's not my leadership style. It's always been a we thing. But we need to have some common ideas together, and that's why in the newspaper I mentioned this book, America's Best Urban Schools, because it's really interesting because it has all of these details of what it takes, and I can't name them all. I could try, but there's chapter after chapter of what we can do as a district to have some of America's best urban schools. And why do we want America's best urban schools? Because that will really prepare our students for a really bright future. And so it talks about how to do that. And so my basic philosophy is, and I mentioned this to the board, and so one of it is that we would want to have results-oriented teacher teams at every level, in every school, and not just PLCs. I know we call them PLCs, but what I like to call them, and what we talked about at Rose, was results-oriented teacher teams, where people work together. And it's really interesting. There are people in this audience, and when it's really interesting, you think that a principal knows everything about everything, and they really don't. In fact, a teacher team of kindergarten teachers are going to help each other much more than a principal could. So when those results-oriented teacher teams work really well together and they're knowledgeable and they have a focused goal, they achieve amazing results. And so starting at the basic unit of results-oriented teacher teams, and then we also want principal results-oriented teacher teams. And I proposed this idea to the board that, TUSD is this giant district. And I kind of gave them an example of something like this. There's kind of two philosophies of leadership. There's one, and I call it, there's a control paradigm and there's an empowerment paradigm. And let me just give you a little example. And you know those rowers, what's that called? Mike, you said, what's that called? Like at Harvard, they have those crews, the crews that row together, and then the little guy that tells them, cock?
Yeah, cock's good.
Okay, that. And so the one that's yelling orders at everybody. And so they're all rowing and they're yelling orders. And I've never seen that as a good leadership style. This kind of this top down. What I see is, and this is the way I view TUSD, that if we really want to get to where we want to get, it's kind of like being in the White River Rapids, because we're kind of are in White River Rapids. And we're all together on this raft, and I might have the rudder in the back. I might be guiding that a little bit, but the whole team is on the boat with their vests on, and they're all telling me what to do so we don't miss the rock ahead, or we don't miss this, or we go this way, or we go that way, so we can get past the rapids and get to our goal. And so to me, that's the kind of vision I have of all of us working together to achieve this wildly important goal, which is improve our achievement year after year and consistently until students are knocking our doors to come back, from Tanque Verde, from Vail School District, from the charter schools in this area. I could never, this is not ever something that I could ever do by myself, but we'd have to have results-oriented district team. And in my mind, what that would look like is that we'd have 5 assistant superintendents, and we would have the district into zones, and they would all be empowered and take the initiative to help their area be the best in the district. Trying to do 49 to 50,000 students in the kind of structure that we have now is really difficult, but if we break it into 4 zones and they work together as a team to help each other, and at the same time they are, I know the kind of people that they would be probably pretty competitive and want their area to be the best. But they'd also want to work together, and that's what we'd want. We'd want them working together. And there's something interesting. As I've moved to this other organization, I found out just this piece of research, and I don't think I ever shared this with my staff. Sometimes, I look at the research because even though Rose, we had a lot of success, ultimately nobody really cares, because it's like, okay, great, that's one school, just like this question, but what about this big district? And so as we work together, in that kind of format that I was saying, we can really accomplish great things. So I think that's the answer to the question.
This question was submitted from a sophomore from Choya High School.
Good.
Why do you deserve the job, and how will you benefit high schools?
I don't know why I deserve this job, to tell you the truth. But that's a very good question. How will I benefit high schools? I think some of the best experience that I've had is just as a father. And, to me, that was one of my most important roles, if not the most important role as a father. And I can just tell you about my own children that had a lot of experience in high school and what they kind of expected from their high school administrators and from their high school. Like my first daughter, she really was involved in student council and choir, that they provide opportunities so they can really flourish at the high school. And she got a scholarship, a part-time scholarship to NAU, and she became a teacher. My next daughter was student body president, and she got a full ride scholarship to Harvard. My next daughter, who kind of struggled in education, she really struggled. She in fact, we kind of make a joke of, in fact, her husband says, I really like to tell jokes to my daughter Monique, because if I tell her tomorrow, she forgot that I said it yesterday. But Monique worked really hard, so she took the skill set that she had being really organized, whereas my other daughter didn't have to be that organized. Monique took this skill set of really being super organized, talking with her teachers, and seeing what she needed to do well in school. And she earned the Baird Scholarship, the Coca-Cola Scholarship, and I think 2 or 3 others. My wife helped her with those scholarships, so I don't know what, but there was a lot of them. And she was really successful. And here's 2 students, one who has a real capacity to learn and has a great memory, and one who has not such a great memory, but learns how to make the best of that. And then my 4th daughter, she spent most of her time at the gym doing gymnastics, and she got a full ride scholarship to BYU doing gymnastics. And so all these children in the same family, but they all really worked hard in school, and some had to work harder and work differently. So I guess I would say to this young lady that I believe that every student can be successful, and we want to give them every opportunity. In fact, sometimes we complain about the state and the accountability system, AZ Merit, and the test, and what they want for us to show that we are making gains with our students. But they've changed it. I think you all know that they've changed the new accountability system to the A through F accountability system. And one part of the accountability system, they haven't put as much focus on proficiency and less focus on growth, but they put a lot of focus, like 20% of that is for career and technical education. So they're really creating a system that we can all work towards to help those students be successful, not only those college-bound students, but the students that want to be successful in a career. And so I think in TUSD we need to really work on that career and vocational education and CTE courses so those students can also be successful. So I think we would work together, and the best people that can make those decisions in collaboration would be the high school people, because just like this drama teacher that goes the extra mile, he really creates a lot of opportunities for those students. Before we get that other question, I wanted to say one other thing about my vision. And I just came to I think I was going there, and then I forgot it, so I didn't say it. So one thing that I realized when I left Rose is that we had a lot of recognition systems within the system. And I did some research on that, and one of the best ways to help an organization move forward, especially with achievement, is to do recognition and rewards. And it was really interesting because I never realized that there was a lot of research on how powerful that is. But at Rose we had a lot of different recognitions. One, we had every single morning we would announce the classes with perfect attendance, and then we announced the classes that only had 1 person absent. And so that was a recognition. Also for attendance, which it's really important that students come to school. If they don't come to school, then they won't learn. Another one we had is we had ping pong and pizza with the principal, and which was one of my favorites. And so every month, the students that had perfect attendance, we'd have a drawing, and then we would have 1 student from each grade level. They would play ping pong with me. And I'm a pretty good ping pong player, and we'd eat pizza first, and we'd play ping pong. We had 3 ping pong tables, and I'd be in the middle playing ping pong, and I'd play with the kindergarten, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grader. And by my 13th year there, I had done ping pong and pizza with the principal for 13 years every month. And I was kind of getting tired of it. In fact, sometimes when you play against a kindergartner, it's basically hitting the ball and trying to hit their paddle, because they'll hit up here and the ball will hit them here. But they're soft, so they don't hurt. And they would smile at me, and I'd go, okay, this is really fun. And so after 13 years, kind of getting tired, so I played against each one of these students. And then I got to the 8th grader, and his name was Isaiah. And when he came to me, he said, Mr. Trejo, I've waited 10 years, or was it 8 years? 8 years, because he had been there since preschool. So preschool, kinder, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 10 years. Been there 10 years, been there as long as I had. And he said, Mr. Trejo, I've waited 10 years to play ping pong and pizza with ping pong and pizza with the principal. And that just kind of changed my whole mindset of just that little recognition, that little reward, what it did to that student. We had a lot of other recognitions. We had something called Math Masters, where we really wanted our students to learn their basic math facts, because I think, and for that high school student, this is another thing. Sometimes, and my daughters would tell me this, that sometimes kids in high school, when they're doing some of their math classes, they don't know their basic math facts, so they don't function really well in those classes. So we had a program that motivated them to do their basic math facts outside of the school time. And when they could pass a test of 100 problems in a certain amount of time, they became a math master, and then we had a little celebration at the end of the month. And we were always very strategic when we had those celebrations, because we'd want them, it was a day like after a holiday or on a Friday or a Monday, because we wanted to make sure they got back to school to do that. We had scooter races and other attendance things. We had scooter races for the students, and the peer pressure of the classrooms helped them to want to be at school every day. So they would come because they wanted to participate in that because the class with the best attendance would be able to do the scooter races. And then I got this wild idea after I had worked at Rose for about 3 years. We got this recognition, and we had got this little banner about this tall, and it was really exciting because we were recognized for the work we'd done because we had our results on the Ames test had gone up over 40 points in reading, writing, and math. And so we got this really neat poster about this big, and we were one of the top 3 schools in TUSD, and that was just so exciting to get that poster on behalf of the great work that my staff was doing. So about 7 years later, we came up with this great idea that, we're not getting any more banners from the district, and we have all this achievement, so we made our own banners, but we made them really big. And so we put them in our cafeteria to recognize all the great achievements. In fact, I remember I see some of the kinder teachers here. In fact, I think one of the banners that we put up is that they had received 90% on their Dibbles benchmark, that over 90% of our students were at benchmark on the Dibbles. So we put that up on a big banner and recognized our teachers. So those kind of things, it's what the research says is that's one of the best things you can do to help people when they start achieving small things, that you recognize them and you reward them. In fact, Dr. Sanchez did something really great. He did Celebration of the Stars, which I thought was a great recognition for teachers. In fact, I think we could have done more for the recognition for our teachers at Rose, but what I found is that when their classes got recognized, they felt recognized. But he did the Celebration of the Stars, so when I went over to work for the American Leadership Academy, I told them about the Celebration of the Stars, and so we created a new program that basically my wife and I did for the district, and it was called American Leadership Academy Awards, which is basically that was modeled right after the Celebration of the Stars, and it really made a difference in the district of those teachers because, teachers, wherever they teach, they really give their heart and soul and just do everything in their power to help children learn. So I think any way we can celebrate and reward the successes, even though they may be small at the beginning, and as they get greater and greater, banners and those kind of things, is we really want to recognize and reward people that are doing those extra mile things, because really the first mile is the one that you do because you're there. The second mile is where all the reward and all the excitement and all the joy comes from teaching.
Please outline your specific experience in working with the framework of a desegregation court order, addressing both your successes and your failures.
At Rose, we didn't work much with the desegregation order. It was interesting. Desegregation, we want to have a good mix, and there's certain percentages, and I don't know those percentages, but there's certain percentages of different ethnicities of students at every school, so there's not segregation that's happening in our schools. And the district goes to extensive lengths to make sure that happens. In fact, when I was in transportation this morning, it was amazing the things that we do to help meet the desegregation order. To tell the truth, at Rose, I didn't have a lot of experience with the desegregation order because the schools that they really focused on were the magnet schools, which are motivated to help students from different ethnicities come to the same school so they have a full, diverse system, and so they can all learn really well together.
How will you address the strong sense among TUSD employees that the superintendent's office is plagued by a revolving door? How will you encourage us to trust your commitment?
I think the only one that left TUSD that wasn't removed was Dr. Fagan. So I think that's, from my experience, that my commitment to TUSD, I'm here. I've been an employee for 23 years. I did move away because I retired and I found something that I thought would be an exciting thing to do, and it's been very exciting and a great opportunity. And I also, one district that I've noticed that seems to do really well consistently is the Bell School District with Dr. Cal Baker, and he's been there, I think, I understand, for 30 years. If I was here for 30 years, I would be about 80. But I'll do my best to, to I'm committed to TUSD. I feel like I've really given my heart and soul to TUSD. And for the simple fact that I'm here, it's a great opportunity to be here. And I know that there's something about consistency that makes all the difference. I think part of the reason that Rose was successful because they knew that the same person was there, that it wasn't this revolving door that kind of creates a new program of the month, a new approach to education year after year. In fact, sometimes, I hate to admit this, and some of the board members are here, we just did our own thing and just wanted to do what we could to help our students be successful and to feel safe and to not only be very confident but have a great character. And so we worked on those things. So my commitment to TUSD is I'm here and I'm excited to stay here as long as they permit me, I guess.
How important are parents to you, and how will you communicate with all parents?
Well, I think social media, it's pretty easy to communicate these years, just by putting things out to the parents. Parents really make all the difference in the schools. And what I found is sometimes parents are so busy with their own lives that they really want schools to really help them with their children, to help them have a vision and a mission. In fact, sometimes I think that our students were so focused on their education and wanting to achieve what we had helped them to do that they really influenced their parents to take education more seriously. And it became really important. In fact, some teachers that would come to Rose and they would be new there, they said, we've never had parents like this be so interested in their child's education, because the school that we came from before, all they did is they came and complained. But at Rose, they came and they wanted to know what they could do to help. And I thought that was really a telling kind of question, that what happens when you change the culture, when people work together to change the culture and change the achievement and change the vision of students. In fact, I really believe that we created a vision in maybe not all of our students, but most of our students, that they really had the potential to do anything in their life. And there's an educational person, his name by the name of Benjamin Bloom, and he has this quote that a student that has a strong vision of their own future, something to the fact that they can achieve anything. And I found that to be really true, and I think that's part of the school's opportunity to help students have a vision, influence their parents. And parents, they always were so willing to help us. But one of the best things that parents can do is make sure when their students come home that they provide an opportunity to study, and that they talk with them, they read with them depending on where they're at. Just that 20 minutes reading a day makes all the difference, and it's really a time that parents can help their students read. And we had lots of parents come to our school and help us, and they were so supportive of me and our staff to help our students achieve the things that they did. And so it's kind of this back and forth that the school supports the parents and the parents support the school. And as far as communication, there's various ways to communicate. There's newsletters, which we did. There's the internet. There's social media. But there are a lot of ways. I think this is, communicating with all the parents that are interested enough to listen to what I'm saying this evening.
What is your opinion or stance on Mexican American studies?
So Mr. Aguilar came to me this evening. He warned me that I was going to get that question. And I mentioned to him, I said, when I went to the University of Arizona, my degree is, I have a degree in Spanish and I have a minor in Latin American studies. And then I lived for 2 years in Argentina. My wife lived for 2 or 3 years in Argentina and Brazil. And so Mexican American studies, I think, is really important. And I think it's important that we understand other cultures. That's kind of my background. I have a real interest in Latin America. That was my minor. And I love Latin American studies, and I had the opportunity to work with Hispanic children for my entire career up until the last year. And so it's really important to me, and it's really important that the heritage that they have, and that they love their heritage, and that they understand it, and they, have the opportunity to learn more about it. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
How would you improve student achievement across the district, and what role should testing play in that plan?
You know, student achievement, like I mentioned earlier, would be one of the main goals, if not the most important goal. And student testing, you know, it's important. It's just what we do. We're a school, and that's kind of the standard that they've set for us. And I know there are opinions on all across the board, on both ends of the continuum, on how important testing is. Because I know students can learn in a lot of different ways, but the way we're judged as a district is through achievement. And, you know, I know there's that debate that kids will learn a lot of different things, but, you know, just in my career, and it's gone through a lot of evolutions. There was something, when I came to Rose, there was kind of a philosophy or a paradigm that only 20 to 30% of these students can meet or exceed the state standards on Ames. And that was kind of hard because, and you know, it's not us that's a problem, that's what they can achieve. But that's not true because they were achieving at 50, 60, 70%, 80%, even 90% on the Ames assessment. And so, because that was a different change in paradigm, so children can achieve really well on the test. And the test isn't everything because there's a lot of things they learn in school, like getting along with others, about leadership, music, the fine arts. It's not everything, but it's kind of the measure that we have. You know, for a big corporation, their bottom line is, you know, their financial statement. Our bottom line is our achievement. And I hope that doesn't sound hard, but that's what we're doing. We're doing education. That's the standard that we have right now. And even though it's a moving target, you know, because in the next coming years, we don't know if the achievement test is going to be based on ACT, SAT, or we can choose our own. But for right now, we have the AZ merit. And the state keeps working to try to help every student achieve. And when you have a standard, it's something to shoot for. And so, you know, we should be shooting for that standard. So I think the Ames or the AZ merit assessments are important. And I think, you know, this year that there was this kind of idea that because it didn't have to do with graduation, that some people didn't think it was important. But, you know, I think it's important. In fact, I think it's kind of the way we demonstrate what we've learned that year. And it's kind of, in my mind, it's kind of like the Final Four. It's like every school has an opportunity to really demonstrate what they've learned in that year. And so to me, it's a very exciting standard that we can all work towards to do very well and hopefully bring back a lot of students that have left TUSD.
What is your understanding of dual language programs in TUSD, and how would you support TUSD's efforts to build and expand high-quality dual language programs?
You know, as I was driving around today with Kathy Comstock, she mentioned some really outstanding dual language programs. In fact, that they've had some of the best assessment results in the district. She talked about Davis Bilingual Magnet with Carmen Camposano and how they've really made great gains on the assessment. So, you know, what I see dual language is, and my wife went to a dual language school either in Brazil or Argentina, and we've talked about this a lot, and how important it was for her. She would learn the content in English in the morning, and then she would learn the content in the afternoon in Spanish. And it was such a fulfilling experience to learn that way. There's another person in the audience, Lucinda Brunenkamp, who was one of my assistant principals, and I heard great things about Bloom and the dual language program there and the great success they're having on helping students to keep both English and Spanish. So as far as dual language, I would do everything in my power to expand it. In fact, you know, there's one state that it's in their legislature to really expand the dual language program, which is Utah. And I think there's a lot to learn, perhaps going up there and seeing what they're doing, because they have a lot of dual language programs up there. And one thing I mentioned in some of the other interviews that I had with the employee groups and the board is, you know, when you're trying to be one of America's best urban schools or school districts, you need to go visit schools that are doing really well, that are kind of beating the odds. In fact, one of my greatest learning opportunities after we had earned the Urban School Education Award, that I had the opportunity to work with them and visit schools around the country and see what they were doing. And it was really interesting. It was a real learning experience for me because I could observe schools and see all the great things they were doing, but also in my mind I was going, okay, we do that, we don't do that, we could do this and we could do that much better. And I mentioned that to the employee groups, and I mentioned, for example, dual language or project approach. Mary Bell McCorkle School, they have the project approach, and there's this really amazing school in Mesa called Zahiras Elementary. You know, they could go visit, because what they'll do is it will affirm the great things they're doing at their school and also help them to see other things that are happening at other schools that are really beating the odds. And so that helps to build this vision of what we can achieve, because sometimes to shift that paradigm, you have to see somebody actually doing it. In fact, we did this a lot. I did this as an administrator here and also in the new school that I work at, is that when we have a really outstanding teacher, we want teachers to visit that classroom to see all of the pieces of the puzzle be put together so that they can see, so they start seeing that this is possible, that this can actually happen, because there's something about telling them something but them seeing it firsthand that does something to their paradigm. It helps shift it in a way that they can say, if they can do it. And then what typically happens is the teacher that is really doing a great job wants to mentor and help that teacher if they're open to that kind of help. So I think we need to have a process to visit schools around the country and districts around the country that are doing things different and better than we are. And that not only includes public schools, but that could even include charter schools. And, I really think that to have a common vision, there has to be a sense of urgency. And I think the sense of urgency is here. We just haven't recognized it. I mean, when we lose almost 15,000 students, that sense of urgency is here, it's now. But I don't know if we've recognized it and are using that to have a common vision where we're all working together to turn that around, to bring those students back.
This is a question submitted from a student at Choya, a senior at Choya. What are you going to do about the budget issues?
You know what? I'm just going to tell you straight. I told the board this. They asked me a similar question. I'm going to look around and I'm going to find the best chief financial officer there is. Because my focus is on achievement. And frankly, that's the key. We find a person with high integrity that really knows what they're doing, and they will get the budget in order. I mean, we have the resources, and we can find someone like that. And that's what I would do.
Are you in favor of outsourcing substitute teachers?
Outsourcing substitute teachers. That brings up a lot of things. Substitute teachers work really hard, and there are some that are really outstanding, and if they are, we need to hire them. But sometimes when you have a classroom and a substitute teacher, it's really hard on the students, and it's really hard on the parents, and sometimes they just don't have the best educational experience that year. In fact, it can be really detrimental, and I hope I don't offend any substitute teachers, because some of them give their heart and soul as they substitute, and for whatever reason they don't want to be a full-time teacher, and they really do a good job. But I would really like to have full-time teachers in every classroom, and I know that's a real challenge right now with the teacher shortage. But and not to put down substitute teachers, because we've had good ones and not so good ones. But I think we need to have teachers in every classroom. In fact, I was telling the board today, and I said, did you know that about a year and a half ago, A for Arizona, which is an organization run by Lisa Graham Keegan, who was one of the past Superintendent of Education in Arizona, thank you. You were here when she was the Superintendent of Education, thank you. Well, she is head of an organization called A for Arizona, and she came to Rose to ask us what we thought about having teachers that were not certified teachers. And this is just the way I see it. Doesn't mean anybody has to agree with me, it's just the way I see it. We have lots of classrooms without teachers, and we have a lot of talented people out there with degrees, and some, frankly, without degrees. There's a person at Rose that doesn't have a degree, and I would put her in as a teacher tomorrow if I could. If I had the ability to put her in as a teacher, I'd put her in if we had a substitute in that classroom. And I think there are a lot of really talented people. In fact, I have a couple sisters, one's right here, and I think she would be an amazing, she doesn't have a degree, but I think she would, within a couple weeks with a little bit of training, she would be an outstanding teacher. And so, there are people out here and in the community. In fact, at American Leadership Academy I'm working for, there was this, one of the principals, or they call them directors, that took a lot of initiative. And he had 4 parents that came to his school and were volunteering every day last year. And he had some teachers that just were not a good fit for his school because he was a first-year principal. And so he knew that they were going to leave. And so he started something called Teacher University. And he started working with these teachers once or twice a week. He would provide classroom management classes for them. And then he would, we have an instructional model that we use by Mike Smoker called the 7 Elements of Effective Instruction. And he would teach them that. And he would teach them how to work with parents. And he'd teach them how to work with students. And he would teach them all the things that a teacher needs. So every week, for about 2 hours a week, he prepared these folks to be teachers. And then they went through the process so they could be in the classroom. And now he has 3 of the 4 teachers at his school right now. So he's found 3 teachers that love his school, have children at the school, and want the best for school, and are really highly motivated to learn. And we have, and I saw, he was doing that by himself. In TUSD, we have all these resources to help people that either have a degree and perhaps even some that don't. That would be really outstanding teaching. Now, I know you can't do that across the board, and I don't know what that would take. But I think under the circumstance we are right now, until we pay teachers better or we don't have a teacher shortage, there are some really powerful things that we could do to get teachers in the classroom that would be consistent and frankly could be very good.
Having experience by working in the district, which initiatives would you focus on in your first year, and what 3 to 5 improvements would you make in your first 90 days?
Improvements, 90 days. I have a list here that was my plan for the first, I'm just going to get it. You don't have to memorize.
Okay, it's halftime, so you can take a minute or 2.
I think I gave them all to the board. Well, the first one is I would go on a listening tour, because I really would want to listen to what all of the stakeholders would want to do in TUSD, what their priorities are, and that we could create a common vision together. Because if you don't have a vision together, then it doesn't really work very well. And when we had a common vision at Rose, everybody was on board and it worked really well together. The second one is I would visit classrooms, because I really want to see what's really happening in the classrooms, what instruction really looks like, are kids really learning? Because one of the first initiatives that I would do, and like I said, I don't want too many, and I want buy-in for the few that we do. We really want to focus on achievement. We want to focus on good instruction, and there are some highly effective instructional models. Oh, you got it, okay. So like I was saying, the first one would be listening groups, that I would go to employee groups, parent groups, student groups, and we would just visit. But I'd also want them to read a book, which is called America's Best Urban Schools. And so they would have kind of an idea of what really works at schools that are highly effective. And so we would have a common language to start talking about. The next thing I do is go on a tour of classrooms and visit all the schools and see all the great things they're doing, but also perhaps talk with teachers and talk with principals to see what some of the gaps are. And then work on those gaps with the teachers and the principals. And like I said, the principals, some of them are really struggling. In fact, there was one principal I talked to about 3 months ago. He had hired a teacher a special ed teacher from our school, and he wanted to get a reference check, and I was talking with him. And what I recognized in his voice as he was talking about all the challenges that he was having, that was me, my first and second year at Rose, all the challenges that I was having. And Roger Pfeiffer was the superintendent then, and I called him up and I kind of shared with him some of the challenges I was having. So he came out and we talked for a moment, and he as he listened to me, there was no judgment. There was just, what can I do to help? And he kind of came up with this idea, and there was this administrator. Her name was Dr. Schaefer, Dr. Ann Schaefer, and I think some of you might remember she was about this tall, but she was a very powerful lady, even so she was kind of elderly and had retired. And it was so good to have her there to mentor me, to coach me, even though she never let me know that she was mentoring and coaching me. She was doing it because I would, it's really frustrating when you try to do things and there was resistance and it was hard and you weren't sleeping at night and AD was breathing down your back, and she would just really work, and we worked together. And then she connected me with someone else, Marsha Wolf, who's in the audience, who has since been another mentor and a model and a coach for me. There are things you can do that can really help administrators get through the tough times. So I would want to have that same kind of attitude, that I've been there, I know what it's like, and I also know that you can do it. I know you can have a great impact and turn things around. So the next thing is, like I mentioned earlier, reorganize the district, which the district leadership at 1010, because I think that we need to have a results-oriented district leadership team of assistant superintendents that have their own basic district, and that they're working together to improve those districts. Because, like I said, it's not about me, it's about us. And then I would work with them, and we'd work together, and I'm sure they would help me learn as we work together to try to improve the district. So that would be another initiative. Another one that I would like to do is every classroom, every day. And that sounds kind of, some teachers may take that as like micromanaging, but I never saw it that way. I saw when I went into classrooms, there are certain classes I went to, and those are really my happy place. I go in the classroom, smile at the teacher because things were just going so well. And there's other classrooms that were really difficult to go in. And those are the kind of classrooms you need to get in. In fact, all three of my past assistant principals are all here. And that's one of the things I said, if you're in every classroom every day, you really know what's going on. And do you have the courage to do something about it when you see things that aren't happening right? And you should also be really affirming all the teachers that things are really going really well. And you know that if you're in the classrooms, it's maybe perhaps not every day, but if you can have that goal to be in every classroom every day, that does amazing things for the site. And I did find some research on that there's these two ideas that's called isolation from new teachers. Sometimes they come right out of the university, and we isolate them, and they isolate themselves. And they never learn much more because they're isolated. They don't have a team to work with. The principal's never in the classroom. It's like, here's your classroom, and kind of good luck. And then there's something called a buffering system, where we kind of play this kind of, I don't want to call it a game, this kind of system where, if you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. And so we have this buffering system of not really supporting teachers. Whereas if we're in the classroom every day, then we need to have those talks and find the support that we can to help them to improve instruction. And those two things in themselves, in my opinion, reorganizing the district, every classroom every day, and then having a focus on achievement, I believe our achievement would start moving up relatively fast. In fact, there's a lot of research that says when you have results-oriented teacher teams working together in small groups, and if you have it all the way through the district, that's the most effective way to change a district because everybody owns it. It's not just a top-down kind of ownership, it's we all own it. And so that makes a big difference in how the whole district functions. So I think that's about 3 or 4 initiatives. But I don't want too many, just 1 or 2.
As the leader of the district, how will you ensure the safety and educational opportunities for all students, including undocumented and LGBTQ students, and sites and policies?
Say that question again.
Sure. As the leader of the district, how will you ensure the safety and educational opportunities for all students, including undocumented and LGBTQ students, and site policies?
I think the most important thing is every student is important, and we need to support every single student, regardless of race, ethnicity, whether they're documented or not. And I think that we need to work and love them, just like, people can be discriminated because they're overweight, they're too tall, they're too short. They can be discriminated against in a lot of different ways. But our responsibility as teachers and people that work for this district is to treat every student equal and provide the best educational opportunity and experience that we can for every single student. And that's just the right thing to do. You know, this is, to me, that's a question that's absolutely, that's the right thing to do for every student.
How do you plan on supporting STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, at the district level?
You know, I hadn't thought about that one. I think I would talk with the STEM schools and see what they're doing and how we could improve the science, technology, engineering, and math program. I'm not sure that every school wants to do that, but we can start building on that. I don't know where we're at right now. That would be something that I would need to study and look at and see, you know, with the folks that are involved in that and get a better understanding. And then, like I said, with the other, like project approach or dual language, visit places around the country that are really beating the odds and helping their students not to only be prepared for the future in those areas, but also that they do really well in the assessment simultaneously. So, you know, all of these things are good. And we want to be the best at it.
What do you plan on doing about the bullying problem at so many TUSD schools? Do you believe students who are violent towards other students should have consequences?
Well, of course. You know, I just go up to my past experience. Right now I know the district, this is a really huge part of the desegregation plan that we treat all students fairly, whether they're a minority, whether they're African American or Hispanic, that they're treated equally as any other student. And you know, I just need to let you know one thing, that in my career at Rose, I think you can tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Matthews, but I think it was only one student. And that was one student. And you know, we at Rose, we were really fortunate because we got a lot of great media all the time, but we did get some bad media once when a student brought marijuana brownies to school and shared it with another student. The other student got sick, and then they came to me, and you know, we had to suspend him for a couple months. Yes, there are consequences. You know what I found one of the best consequences are, and this kind of has to do with something that the district is doing called restorative practice, and I thought, you know, this is kind of what I did anyway. You know, when a student would get in trouble, you know that one of the toughest things you can do is bring them into your office and call their mother and have the mother on the other side of the phone and say, you know, this is what they did. And sometimes they want to not tell their mother the truth. And so what I would do is, you know what, I'm going to call your mother. And after they would kind of start not quite telling the truth, I'd say, you know what, he's going to try again and tell you the truth. So then he'd get on the phone and he would tell the mother the truth. And it's amazing to see a 6th grade or a 7th grade start sobbing as they have to tell their mother the truth. And you know, that's really a good way, because parents really love their children and they can love them. They can be tougher and kinder at the same time. And that's really important that they work with them. And of course, there needs to be consequences. And we had a system, but I think the most important thing about consequences, is it's the right consequence that will help them to learn, but also that we're consistent, that if we say there's a consequence, that we actually do it and we follow through with it. And so I think those are the most important kind of principles over consequences. I know we have a long list of consequences for the whatever problem that they have. But I think sometimes we just need to really love them and work with the parents so that they can really not only learn from the thing that they do, but also start improving. And of course, if they do, you know, like drugs or guns or things like that, there have to be really stiff consequences, because we really do need to send a message that just not something that you can have in schools.
Provide an example of how you can build consensus when you have a divided board.
You know, it's all I can go is from what I understand. In fact, I heard about some research that it's really interesting, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but they did this research on school boards across the country, and they would videotape the school boards to see how they got along, and then they compared how they got along with the letter grade of the district. And they noticed when there was high trust and they got along really well, that the letter grade was good. When they didn't get along, and there was low trust, they didn't get along. And I went through that myself at Rose. When I came in, as a new principal, I made a lot of mistakes. And so sometimes, even though I wanted to build trust, I did things that didn't build trust. And so one of the things that I found that works really well, and I'm not preaching to anyone, even though the board members are here, but it's really hard to apologize to someone when you think they've wronged you. But I found that to be very effective. Even when they have wronged you, you will sincerely apologize to them. And one thing that I would really work through is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because there's something called the maturity continuum. And on that maturity continuum, there's the last 3 habits. The first 3 habits are how to work on yourself. The next 3 habits are how to work with people. So I think, and I know the board, they're all really dedicated people, and I know they want the best for TUSD. And I think because sometimes they want so badly the best for it, and they see the world differently, that they work really hard, but they don't work together. And so in the 7 habits, the last 3 habits are, the first one is think win-win. And so how do we get to win-win? Because sometimes when you go for win-lose, not only do they lose, but you lose. And so if you can really go for win-win, but part of the win-win is that sometimes we have to agree to disagree agreeably. And that's the key. We have to learn to agree to disagree agreeably. And if we can do that, then you can actually move to win-win. And that's only the first step. Because once you get to win-win and you want a mutually beneficial situation where you really want to go win-win, and you know what, the kids in this district are so important, we need to go for win-win. The board needs to go for win-win, and I need to work with them to go for win-win. So after you have that end in mind to go for win-win or a mutually beneficial solution to problems, then you move to seek first to understand before being understood. And there's a lot of meaning in that seek first to understand before being understood. And if we didn't experiment right now, I'll try to give you an example. If we didn't experiment right now and somehow I could suck all of the oxygen out of this room, would any of you care at all what I'm saying? The first thing you want to do is run out that door so you could get oxygen. And there's something called psychological air. And when someone feels really understood, they know that you really understand them, then that gives them psychological air. And guess what happens? When they feel that psychological air, what do they want to do? They really want to listen to what you have to say. So that's why seek first to understand before being understood. So, those are hard things and to do, especially when you're so passionate about things. But if you can get to that win-win, and there have been groups that are just adamantly opposed in different areas, and they've actually come to win-win, and I can get into a lot of different examples of how different groups, pro-abortion and pro-life, there's actually some groups that have actually got together to work on different ways to help with that situation in a really positive way. So the first thing is seek first to understand before being understood, and the last one is then you can get to synergy. Then you can really come up with ideas that will really change the way we do business in this district. So, that's what I'm most familiar with. In fact, there's some research on it that I actually heard about today that we could look at and really work together as a board and a superintendent to do what's really right for the students. And even though, this is not going back on what you value, but it's really trying to find a win-win so we can really do what's best for students. So I guess that's the approach that I would do, is that we work in that area together as a team.
What will you do about getting TUSD out of desegregation?
I think from my experience, just seeing what the different superintendents do, there's the special master, there's certain criteria that we have to meet and document, and we're really doing a good job. In fact, there's some areas that we are almost ready to get out of, and I hear that the special master and the judge really would like to have their legacy be to wrap this thing up, okay? And you know what? There's some nuances to that, because even though they wrap it up, for example, the transportation system that we're working really hard to have desegregation right in this district, is that the money won't go away, even though the court order has been lifted. we will still get that money. It may not be as much, but they want us to keep those things in place so we can keep doing a good job at it. So I think we're close, but we need to continue to fulfill the criteria that they've set in front of us, and they're giving us resources to do that. So I think we just need to keep following through and be diligent about doing what we need to do so that we can do our part so we can get out of this desegregation order, because it really would make, there wouldn't be so many things to be doing as we're trying to do the most important things.
All employees are not treated equal in TUSD. How can we treat employees equally? Also, employees are important as a team. How will you keep the same team?
Well, if I understand the question, that's exactly what I want. I want the employee groups, the employees all the way from top to bottom to work in groups, to work together. And if we have a common vision and a sense of urgency, because you got to have both, you got to have a common vision and a sense of urgency to start moving things in a better direction. And you know, when you really want achievement, everyone knows that you've got to work on climate and culture to help with the achievement, because if kids aren't behaving well, but if they have a real goal and we're doing everything in our power, we're demanding the best and we're helping them, we're supporting them to achieve academically, it's amazing how much less discipline problems you have. In fact, as I was visiting different schools, the person I was with, and it wasn't Nick, it was someone else, that was talking about how some schools, they just have the nicest students and the best culture. And she said, you know, Rose, just, you know, that went to Tucson High, they just have the nicest students that go there. And so I think as groups work together, that, you know, that's just common sense, that we want to treat everybody right. And it's just the right thing to do.
Transportation is ignored a lot. What can you do to get it more well known? Thank you.
Well, I spent about 2 hours at the transportation department, and they really have a big job. And, you know, they're really working hard to improve transportation. I mean, they're doing some really amazing things. In fact, they showed me something where they know, they have every student listed on this computer screen, and they know the route of the student, and they know exactly where every student is at all times when they're on their bus route, so they can find them. In fact, they made the comment that usually students don't get lost unless the parent puts them on the wrong bus. I don't know, that's what they say. Because sometimes parents get in a rush and they see a yellow bus, okay, jump on. So then they have to find them. And that's our responsibility, and they do a really good job. And I thought, you know what, this is really interesting, because they have this amazing screen. I said, where did you get that computer program to track every student? And so I guess what I'm doing right now is recognizing them, that they have some really entrepreneurial things going on there, and they're very exciting to me. I never knew how sophisticated and how they're constantly working on having consistent employees and having consistent bus drivers, because you know it's really tough to be a bus driver because you work 8.5 months and then you don't have a job and they don't pay you. So they're looking at other districts in Clark County. She was telling me about something really interesting in Clark County in Nevada, which we don't have gambling here. But what they do is they work for the district, and then they work for the casinos those 2 months, and then they go back and work for the district, so they have full-time employment, so they work together. That's not solving the Clark County education problems, because they have huge problems. In fact, I think they have bigger problems than we do, from what I understand. So they have lots of solutions. They're coming with ideas. But get back to this screen. They had this computer screen. They had 2 screens, one where all the buses were, and another one where all the students were. I said, who did this? Where'd you buy this program? This is really cool. And they said, we created it. And then they told me whoever created it said, you know what, we need to sell this. We need to sell this to all these other districts. You know, they would get a lot of recognition if they could make some money for TUSD selling that great program to other districts.
Speaking of technology, what is your view of technology in education, and how would you lead the district in digital transformation?
I think it was my first year at Rose that, and I forgot the assistant superintendent I was working with, but at the end of the year, we're much better now in the district, but they would give you this money that hadn't been spent. And as a new administrator, we had quite a bit of money, because when you're underperforming in corrective action and you have reading first, we had a lot of money coming in. And so then at the end of the year, they give you this chunk of money that they had left over. They don't do that as much anymore, because we're better at spending it across the district. But they gave me like $100,000, and they said, oh, by the way, you have 2 weeks to spend it. And it's like, okay. And then there's all this criteria that you have to follow to spend the money. But what we did is we bought a lot of computers at Rose, and then we bought a really sophisticated program called Success Maker, or maybe it was Waterford, I don't know which one. But as we implemented this program, it really helped us with achievement because, you know, as good as teachers are, that there are still some gaps that some of these computer programs are very sophisticated. In fact, they have students get on the computer and they have these, they provide little games that the computer program is constantly diagnosing where the student's at and taking them, whether if they need help over here, then they get some help over here. If they need an intervention, they need an extension, the computer program helps them. So I believe that that really helped our students move forward with their achievement. That was another one of the things we did to help with achievement. So I really believe in technology. And it was interesting because based on some of the results that we had with Success Maker, that I think it was 3 or 4 years ago that the district spent $5 million to have Success Maker across the district. And you know, but it always comes down to, in fact, I forgot to say that one of my last priorities was about focus, clarity, and persistence. And because, you know, you can have the best programs in the world, but it's all about implementation or execution. And so there's this book that I've been reading, and it's really important because it's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And it talks about these wildly important goals, and it talks that there's case study after case study after case study of effective organizations that if they have 1 or 2 goals, that they can be really successful with, but they have to be wildly important goals because there's this whirlwind of things happening over here of all of the things that we need to do to keep the district afloat. But you need to have these wildly important goals, and then you need to have lead measures and lag measures. Lead measures are the ones that you actually are doing today. So your lag measure, which would be AZ merit, that you can do good on that, because if you don't do the lead measures to help prepare for the lag measure, which is AZ merit, then obviously you don't know where you're going to be, so you have to have a scoreboard and know what you're doing all along the way. So you need to have this whole process in place, and that's not something that just comes naturally. That needs to we need to do that training, and it needs to be throughout leadership in the district. So it's not just about having great ideas, but really when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, it's about execution. And we don't all know how to do that well. In fact, I think sometimes we have great ideas, but it's kind of like the idea of the month or the program of the month. But there's something about clarity and persistence that make great programs come to fruition. And it's all about execution. And so in my mind, that's the most important thing, because we can have all these grand ideas, but you know, I'd like to have 1 or 2 and then work on the execution of those and do them really well. Did I answer the question? Okay.
Our district loses many students to charter schools. What would you do differently to keep our students, and how would you support special ed students, as we know charter schools are not very supportive of them?
You know, that's an interesting question, because the organization I work with, they are very interested in special ed students. But they're a comprehensive school, and how do we not lose students to charter schools? And you know, charter schools aren't the only competition, but also Vail School District, Tanque Verde School District. I'm not Catalina Foothills. I'm not sure how many students are going to Sunnyside, but they're all our competition. And you know, frankly, and I shared this experience with the board this afternoon, that about 1.5 years ago, Dr. Sanchez and I, we had come up, kind of talked about the idea of duplicating what we were doing at Rose. And so we had invited the Gates Foundation to fund this duplication, and we were going to do it at another site in TUSD. And a representative from the Gates Foundation came to CE Rose, and after he walked through all the classrooms, and he was very impressed and very complimentary. And as he was walking out the door, just a side note, he looked like a guy from GQ. He didn't look like an executive, but he was this tall, handsome guy. He's just like, wow. And so he said, you know, the most important, what your school reminds me of is a well-run charter school. And so to me, that was really telling. And you know, my staff can back me up on this. We got a lot of students from charter schools that came over, and they were a couple years behind. Now, not all charter schools are like that, you know, because I feel like the organization I work with, they take all comers. They take all special education students, and they don't have, you know, legally you have to take everyone, but sometimes there are ways to kind of filter. But the organization I work with, they take every student and they try to provide the best educational experience possible for every student. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to provide the best educational experience possible, get our achievement up, make sure our culture and climate is right. And we can market a lot, we can do a lot of things, and we can provide a lot of things, but basically the most important thing is achievement and a climate and culture that parents want to take their kids to. I mean, all these other programs, they're really wonderful, and I think they draw a lot of kids like University High. I don't think they have problems with enrollment. I think there are schools in this district, Rose being one of them, that they're at 100% capacity or more, and they're doing something right, and it has to do with achievement. And I just went to Dodge Magnet School. They have a waiting list. And it seems to always kind of revolve around achievement, because that's what we're doing is education. And so I think that would be one of the most important things as we keep working together to raise the achievement and create a climate and culture that children can really flourish in and achieve well is what we need to do. Because they're coming. They're coming to town, and if we don't feel that sense of urgency now because of the students we lost, believe me, they're already coming. There's a school named Legacy, a charter school, and they're an amazing charter school. In fact, in the Queen Creek area, they're one of our biggest competition, and they do an amazing job with students. And other charter schools are going to be here. And there's some great ones here in Tucson, but you haven't seen really great ones because they're there and they're coming, and they are doing things, and they want to take your students. And you know what? I don't see them as a competition because, I was talking to a superintendent from the Phoenix Union School District, and we were talking because I called him because he's a friend of mine. He was a Rodale Principal of the Year, and I was calling him. I said, we need to have a special ed director. And so we were looking all over, and he said, you know what? I'd love to help you. Let me give you a few names. And then he told me, he said, you know what? Charter schools, we're all in the same business. We're all here to help students learn and do the best we can. And that competition helps everyone to be better. And we've just got to do our best, just like at Rose. Charter schools, I didn't care because we were doing a great job and people recognized it for us. And the charter schools weren't a challenge. We were getting, I think, more kids coming to our school than our students were going to their schools. Okay, and everybody has an opportunity to go where they want to, nobody's telling you to go to McDonald's or Carl's Jr. or whatever. You have a chance to go whatever restaurant you want. And students have that same opportunity now. We just need to be the best there is, and we can do that.
The district has the SCPC, it's the School Community Partnership Council. What is your vision for restructuring or creating an effective model with this council?
I only know a little bit about the SCPC meetings. I went to a few of the meetings, and they seem to be not attended very well. And so, that would be something that I'd have to work with a group of people to find out what the challenges are and what we could do to improve it. To answer that question right now, I don't have enough information, and I haven't talked to the right people. But I'm sure there's opportunities for improvement.
How do you see TUSD working with Pima Community College to help TUSD students?
I heard of a really interesting idea. Now, listen to this one. And this came from the charter schools. In fact, the organization that I work with, they just built, this is their third K-12 school. And so, do you know that they started construction 4.5 months ago, and their opening day was today. And they had, in the K-6, they had over almost 700 to 800 students, and the high school they had, I think, 700. So they're almost full, and they broke ground 4 months ago. And so think about a K-12 school. In fact, I think Vail does it. Think on some of the implications of that, how that would serve parents if they had a K-12 school where they could take their kindergarten student, their third grade student, and their senior in high school to one school and drop them all off at the same time, and how that would cut down on transportation costs. That's just something they understand their customer base, and they're wanting to, because that's what parents want. They want a school where all their kids can go. And then there was another idea that in Payson, Arizona, it didn't happen, but they wanted to have a K-14 school or a K-16 school, even up to a K-20, where not only they could go there and have a community college after high school, but they could have a university, extended classes from the university so they could actually get their bachelor's degree and even get a master's degree. So it was, I think they call it a K-20. And, there are really innovative ideas out there that people are doing because that is really an exciting idea to me. And, I think about Santa Rita and the possibilities there, and Pima Community College. They could be a great partner in some kind of vision like that to create something really exciting that parents would just, I think they would love to have a school like that right on the border where a lot of our students are going to Vail and perhaps Tanque Verde and to some charter schools. If we had an opportunity to create something like that, I think it would be a big draw for parents and a real opportunity for TUSD.
Here's another student question. Can you not take away credit recovery?
I didn't know they were taking it away. Are they taking that away? No? Okay, they're not taking it away. But I had an opportunity to visit with the A-plus School of Excellence. After we received that award, I was able to go visit schools. And there's this amazing school district that I was asked to go evaluate to see if they got the A-plus Excellence Award. And it was in Vail School District. And it was a credit recovery. And they had about 200 students. And it was one of the most inspiring schools I've ever been to because these students, they told me the stories about their students, some that had been actually living in the wash, living on their own, living in a car, and coming back to school and then finding these students and then really working hard with these students that didn't have interest initially, but now they wanted to come back and have a second chance to recover the credits they needed to graduate. And that's another school that we could visit and see what they're doing. And I'm not completely familiar with the credit recovery program in TUSD. I'm sure we have one, but there's always room for improvement.
Teachers get criticized for low test scores, for not giving students the attention and care parents feel they deserve. The lawsuit has hurt student discipline as well as large class sizes. IDEA has led to more individualized instruction demands. We all do this for far less, 7 times less pay as your predecessor. How will you support teachers in the classroom with all this being the case?
Wow. You're going to have to repeat that one.
Teachers get criticized for low test scores, for not giving students the attention and care parents feel they deserve.
Okay, so let me answer that part first. Teachers get criticized for low test scores. I think that's where we have to, that same mindset that we have to demand that they have to be tougher and kinder, that we want to help them be the best teacher they can and demand that they do the best for students, but also do what we need to do to support them and support them every day in the classroom, help them, support them so they can be the best kind of teacher. So that would answer the first one, that we really need to support them, train them, help them to give them mentors, help them see other classrooms, to give them all the opportunity they can to be the best teacher possible.
So the second part basically said that teachers are doing all this for 7 times less pay as your predecessor. So how will you support teachers in the classroom?
It's doing this for 7 times less than my predecessor.
Pay. So it's basically low pay for
Right.
teachers.
Wait, and that's really unfortunate. In fact, a couple years ago, we had a really excellent teacher at Rose, and she was offered a job in Texas, and she told me what she was getting paid, and she was getting paid as much as my assistant principal to go to Texas to work at an underperforming school. With her bonuses, she was going to get paid as much as my assistant principal, which is unfortunate. I don't have the power to change the legislature. I think as we continue to work with the legislature and try to raise the pay of teachers, that's a great thing. But I think also we can do the best we can to have a really supportive environment here and help teachers and do everything in our power to help this be a place where they want to work. Because I understand that TUSD is one of the best paying districts in this area. Is that not true, Mike? Okay. So we're one of the highest paid. I'm not sure why they're not coming to TUSD, or if that's the reason, because we're one of the highest paid districts in this area. I don't know. That's something that we have to work on with the legislature, and perhaps, that budget question earlier, what are we going to do with budget? I'm going to get that great CFO so we can find out where we can find extra pockets of money so we can pay teachers better.
Why do you want this job, and what inspired you to apply?
It's really funny because, this is really uncomfortable up here. Like, really uncomfortable. And, but sometimes, and I know this happens, in fact, sometimes when I were in the administrator meetings, I'm going, you know what? I could do a really good job up there. And I was thinking, I could really do that. And, people kept telling me that. And they kept telling me, and, in my mind, I guess they recruited. In fact, I went to visit Rose because I hadn't been there for almost an entire year, and I just wanted to visit one day. In fact, and this is right after I'd applied for this position. And so I came in, one of the teachers in the classroom, Angel Sobrino, he said, you need to be superintendent. So, and I've heard that so many times over the past 5 years that I think that kind of vote of confidence kind of maybe did something to me. Because, not that I'm aspiring for this, and in fact, I talked with both Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Petticone, and I said, basically, are you guys crazy? Why would you ever want this job? And I think they really have this internal desire that they really can improve things. And that's the same thing. I feel like things could get better if I was part of this. And each one of the superintendents, they're not perfect, but they've each created a part of this foundation that we can use to build upon. And they've, I think they work with their heart and soul, and they do. And because this is not a comfortable position by any stretch of the imagination. What's really hard is because the media was so kind to us at Rose, and from my experience with the superintendent, they're not very kind. So it really does. It's like, is it worth it? And sometimes I visit with my wife a lot. She says, Steve, you can do it. And I, like that lady getting on the bus with Becky, you can do this. Sometimes I say, you can do this. But I really believe that we can make a difference. It's not about me. It's always we, because that's just the way that I've always worked. It's a we thing in my family, with the staff at Rose. In fact, the folks that are sitting back there kind of as a group, I never felt like the smartest guy in the room. I always felt like they were the smartest people in the room, and that I was just there kind of helping them do what they do best. And that's because they had this vision. And sometimes, they would do the vision, and my role was just to kind of get out of their way. In fact, Jill Maxwell is right there, and she was telling me about interventions, and we were talking about interventions, the one they were supposed to be doing. She said, we haven't been doing that for a couple years. We're doing something better. And it's like, what a great thing. They're doing something better and getting better results because they're not doing what I told them, And so I think that's kind of what we need to do, is sometimes create an environment where people will do better than their leaders, and then we just kind of smooth the way so that we can get out of their way and let them educate our students in a really highly effective way.
Could you review again your current position at American Leadership Academy, your role, responsibilities in that position, and what you are most proud of contributing to the success of that school district?
My position is Chief Academic Officer, and as Chief Academic Officer, responsible for instruction, curriculum, and supervision of 9 directors and assistant directors from high school all the way down to, we have K-6 schools and K-12 schools, 3 K-12 schools, and now we're going to have 9 K-6 schools and 3 K-12 schools, and then we just opened one up in Las Vegas, which is a K-8 school. So my responsibility is curriculum instruction. One of the things that my proudest thing is that we brought a consultant on. His name is Mike Smoker, and he has an educational model which is called the 7 Elements of Effective Lessons, which basically is Madeline Hunter's model of essential elements of instruction on steroids. And so we implemented that, and it's really starting to take ground this year, which, when you're just getting started, that we improved achievement across the board at ALA, and they were doing pretty good. Another thing is that we've totally changed the teacher evaluation, which that's something I would like to do. In fact, we had this discussion with the board, and there's certain criteria that you have to follow, but there's this article, and you can look it up tonight, and I think you'll love it. It's called Why Teacher Evaluation, what's it called? Why Complex Teacher Evaluations Don't Work. Okay? Because they focus on too many things. It's like, it's that same principle that you have, how does anybody do, 80 things? Some teachers, I guess they do it. I mean, we'd go down the checklist and a lot of the teachers would do it, but really, what's really most important? It's the instruction in the classroom. In fact, Ms. Maxwell and other teachers, I need to tell you something. Classroom management, remember how I'm so intense about classroom management? And I found this to be true about all of you, that when your instruction is really good, that routines and procedures are part of the instruction. That's what Mike Smoker said. When your instruction is really good, you don't have to worry so much about classroom procedure routine because it's part of what you do, And so it's really interesting that I've learned new things there, but that's what we've implemented. So we've implemented one thing, which is a new instructional model, which is really needed there because they didn't have one. We've also implemented instructional model, what is it? That idea of every classroom, every day. And the teacher evaluation. Why complex teacher evaluation don't work? We actually created a teacher evaluation that's focused on one thing, which is classroom instruction, not everything. So we're focusing on one thing, because we want it to be done really well. And another thing is just, and this is kind of a sideline that I mentioned to you earlier about the Celebration of the Stars, that we did the same thing, which is called American Leadership Academy Awards, which is kind of the same thing as Celebration of the Stars here, which was the first time they did it in the district. So I'm really proud of those. Those are some of the accomplishments. And then we've also, our curriculum team has completely revised the curriculum to be more aligned with the state standards, or something that we used to call in TUSD the power standards, or the AZ Merit Blueprint. So they're very aligned. So when teachers are teaching, that we're teaching. In fact, if you really want, the number one indicator of raising achievement is making sure that our curriculum is written correctly. So we're teaching students what they're going to be assessed on. So, I don't know if any of you have gone to the university class where the professor teaches this and then they test you on this. I never thought that was really fair. And so we want to really, and that's not teaching the test, it's teaching so they'll be successful on the assessment. And so we've done some things because, just like anyone else, people want to come to schools that have high achievement. They just do. That's just what people want.
The state has recently changed the requirements for becoming a teacher, lowering almost all requirements. What are your thoughts on this?
I think I already mentioned that I think, we're not going to take all comers. I think we have to have some kind of screening process to make sure they're the right kind of person and that they are capable of getting into a classroom, but with the right training. And I think principals, in working with their parents in their neighborhoods, can really find those right kind of parents. Like I said, we have a paraprofessional at our site, at Rose, that I think would be an amazing teacher. In fact, I would put her in a classroom tomorrow, if I could. And she doesn't have a degree. She's working on it, but she's been working on it for quite a few years because she's trying to make a living. But I think she'd be an amazing teacher, and she doesn't even have a degree. And I think she'd be a fabulous teacher. And I think, like I said, the A for Arizona came and talked about this whole point about that there are people, that would be amazing teachers if we just were able to bring them in and get them started and train them in a way so they can be really effective.
Please talk briefly about how you would support alternative education in TUSD.
Alternative education. Tell me, explain. I've heard about this, but it's not coming to me what alternative education is.
So it would be possibly a high school student who dropped out.
So like credit
wanted to
recovery.
Come back, a reentry type program.
So kind of like a credit recovery?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Basically we need to have a program because those students need to have a degree and need to have a high school diploma just like other students, and we need to really support them and help them. That's what we're all about, is helping students succeed and prepare for the future.
How do you envision making public education a great option for all TUSD kids, especially at the low achieving schools?
that's what I've basically done my entire career, is working with children in areas that are low income, and I think we've been pretty successful. So I feel like, that's kind of my expectation, is to provide the best educational experience for every student, no matter where they live or what their background is.
How does directing an elementary school prepare one to be superintendent of 85 schools in TUSD?
I think the best thing is that I've been in their shoes, and I know what it's like to have an underperforming school, in corrective action or a year away from corrective action, which is pretty scary because, when you're in corrective action, a lot of things can happen to your school. So I feel like I've been in their shoes, and I think that's one of the best things. I've been in their shoes, and I know it can be done.
So I'm going to give you a chance to have the last word and do your closing statement, and then I'll do a little wrap-up.
Okay.
So, the stage is yours.
I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity, and I want to thank all my friends that have supported me and that are here this evening for kind of, I guess, in some ways, helping me to believe that this is something that I could actually do, and to do it in a way that could make a real difference in TUSD, and really prepare our students for a really bright future, and really prepare them, and build this district in a way that we will have students knocking our doors down to get here. And you know what? Sometimes slow is fast and fast is slow. And I think that's the concern with the board. This isn't a one-year thing. This is a long-term process. And there's something about not only working the work, but also preparing a succession process like they've done in other districts. I know in Vail School District, Cal Baker's been there for 30 years, and they're very successful because they've had consistency and focus. And I know in Flowing Wells that they've had a kind of a succession plan where they keep training people. And if we keep, mixing it up all the time, bringing in different people from different places and not having a plan for the next person to come in and help, that I think we're creating a system that doesn't have high trust. So I believe that, at some point in time we need to get started. And if I happen to be the person or one of the other candidates, that we need to start in a process that starts building trust back again, knowing that we're going to keep that succession in a way that we don't have to go all over the country and find different people all the time. There's something that builds trust when you have people, a plan for succession. And so I want to thank you for coming out this evening and supporting this process. And I'll answer your questions if you have any at the end. So thank you.
So let me again explain, we want your feedback. And we want it, you do not need to put your name on it. We prefer you not to put your name on the feedback sheet. On your way out, if you would give your feedback sheet, we have some volunteers and that will collect them for you. I have a couple friends that are starting college, and I'm going to make a donation to their book fund for helping tonight, the Derrick brothers. And also we had huge support from TUSD Communications, the governing board office, and HR. Without their attention to this detail, tonight would not be possible. We will be having another forum tomorrow night, Wednesday night at this location, and then the fourth forum will be at Saguaro because they have open house here. Again, I really appreciate you coming and your commitment and focus tonight and your respect for the process